Welcome, dreamers. Welcome to a new episode of Reflections with an Accent. My name is Kike Calvo, photographer and entrepreneur. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Priya Parrotta to our show. Welcome, Priya. It is an honor
Thank you.
to have you on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm well. So I just want to start with a very simple yet profound question. Why?
Why? Well, I I come from a very international and multicultural background, and I've spent my childhood and youth um, in communities and in family all over the world. With my mother is from India, my father's side of the family is Italian. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, grew up there as well as in Washington D.C. And so harmony and dialogue across borders has been a very important aspect of my life. And I have been for a long time bothered by the many divides and the many borders which separate us not only from each other but from the natural world. And I think that there is the search for a deep connection and coexistence across both human and natural borders, or rather between humans and the non-human and more than human world, is what my career so far and my life so far has been based upon. And so through writing and through music, through research and through art, I really try to understand, why the divisions and the hierarchies between us exist, and what can be done to bridge the gaps that separate us from from nature as well.
And can I ask you, what is your dream?
My dream is of a world that is based upon kindness, a world where the quietest and the most sensitive voices are given attention, a world that is based upon the the most um, the most humane and the most gentle impulses within the human heart.
How would you describe music to someone who has never heard it?
Music is a language and a river of connection that goes beyond words, and that certainly goes beyond ideology, and goes beyond many of the ways in which we define ourselves. It is something that has always dwelled and will always continue to dwell in the deepest parts of our minds and our souls. And music is just a tremendous medium that gives you access to um, emotions and yearnings that sometimes we don't even know we have until we listen to music that speaks to our hearts.
And from what I understand, environmental consciousness is central to your work. How do
Yes.
you define this term, and what related concepts can capture the essence of being environmentally aware?
I think environmental consciousness is about recognizing our kinship not only with humans but with all of those who perhaps speak and express themselves and live differently from us, from a blade of grass to a fully grown tree to an animal. And so environmental consciousness is realizing that we are family with all of these beings, and that as a result, the way that we see our own lifestyles and our own citizenship and our own belonging within a global community is very much about being in relationship with all these other life forms. Um, and sorry, what was the second part of your question?
So it's okay. So basically, I was asking for some related concepts that can capture the essence of being environmentally aware, so people know you know, other ideas around the same topic?
I think reciprocity is the most important one. Understanding that on this earth we give and we receive, and the way we give and the way that we receive um, is an essential part of our humanity and the way that we think about society. So for me, reciprocity is a very important word that is and concept that is connected to environmental consciousness. Um, Sensitivity is as well. I think that often we live in a world that not only gives a platform to, but also honors the loudest and most aggressive voices, and with that honors, ideologies of conquest and of domination. But to me, what environmental consciousness is having the having the calm and the empathy to be sensitive to the voices that are not always given that kind of platform. And with that sensitivity, we can think in radically different ways about what society is and who we are.
Um, what did you learn from your mother?
Everything. My mother is a very strong and very independent woman, and she has taught me so much about being strong and being independent, and and she has also intellectually and professionally inspired me a great deal as well. She's a professor. She teaches feminist theory, post-colonial theory, Caribbean theory, and is a very creative intellectual. So we have, I mean, since I was a teenager, and still we have almost daily conversations about the state of the world and about how, we as women, and in particular me as a younger woman, can find our place in the world and find a voice when often, as I was saying before, often the most important perspectives and the most important sources of wisdom in the world are not always heard.
And what is the biggest lesson you've learned in your career?
I think that I think that patience is a very important lesson. I feel like when I was younger, I found myself often in quite impatient environments with young people wanting to kind of reach the pinnacle of their careers in a very short amount of time. And I think something that has really helped me is to think of life as a very, hopefully, God willing, as a very long road, and that thinking that way has really helped me celebrate life as it unfolds. And and another thing I think is maybe even more important than that is to never always listen to and respect kind of the most quiet and most sensitive aspect of your voice, because we tend to live in a society that sees that quietness as a weakness. But if you listen to it and honor it, it can become a strength.
Very, very interesting answer. And your work is a uniquely blend of music, environment, and culture. Um, how do you create this narrative about our relationship with the planet?
I think that culture and cultural diversity is an essential part of environmentalism. So something that has been a sort of a guiding force for me is the fact that environmental consciousness and environmental wisdom has existed in so many different forms across human history and across culture, across the vast cultures of our world. And it has been born as well through cultural encounter, through people meeting each other in new situations and coming up with creative ways to be in relationship to their environment. So I think that connection between multiculturalism and environmental consciousness is something that I always try to stay true to, because I think we need to honor all of that cultural diversity when we think about how to move forward and forge a more sustainable society. Um, and part of what drew me to music, and what made music a much more essential part of my career than perhaps I had initially intended, is that music is such an amazing space within which to bring those two things together: cultural vibrancy and environmental knowledge. So what I like to do in my songs is cast different environmental messages within the kind of cultural, within a diversity of cultural landscapes, and I can describe more about that later. But that's kind of what brought me to music, that intersection.
Um, do you think songwriting is a teachable skill?
I think it is, and I've benefited from, the lessons that I've learned in songwriting from other people. But I think it's also a very, so I think there's things, yes, that you can definitely learn from others. For me, it's also been a very, how should we say, a very independent journey. And kind of as I approach new pieces of music, I do so, thinking about, what pain in the world do I currently feel the most urgently, and what sort of song can help provide, can give some healing towards that, that particular pain. Um, so I think, yeah, definitely there's things that can be taught, and different people will have different responses to this kind of question. But to me, songwriting is so much about kind of probing the unknown and finding and coming up with spaces of healing that perhaps don't exist. Or the reason that I write a particular song is because I haven't heard another song like that. And so you're, so a lot of it, I think, a lot of originality perhaps comes from that personal journey that you take with yourself, which maybe can't always be taught.
And can you share an experience where a significant failure turned into a success?
Let me see. Um, I mean, I think possibly like a lot of people who are in the arts, you deal with a fair amount of feeling like people aren't necessarily listening to you. We live in this mediascape that is just so crowded, and so much attention is given to musicians and other creators who happen to have the backing of the industry, who have a huge amount of money at their disposal, who have, a network that can tap into, large numbers of people. And I'm not really like that. I've been doing this work quite independently, and I have a sort of distrust of those big forces of money and influence. And so that,
Priya, sorry that I interrupt you,
yeah.
but I was just thinking about this the other night. I was listening about
Mm,
the life of Quincy Jones and all the things he's done in music. But then I started thinking, I'm learning to play piano. I love
mhm,
music. I love social media and also spreading messages of good. So
mhm.
how do you think small creative forces, can bring the messages far when there's a
Mhm.
lack of big advertising campaigns and money, as you described, behind?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it's sort of, I mean, perhaps that question connects to how I was going to answer the previous, which is that, when you don't have those forces at your disposal, it sort of challenges you to instead become deeper in your message, and sort of deeper in your truth. And so I don't know. I mean, that's a question that I would love to know the answer to as well. How to spread that kind of work. But I think that, um, you know, there's a depth perhaps that you can access when you're not thinking about, you know, who it's going to reach or what other people expect. Um, but it's a difficult question because we live within a very, very crowded mediascape, perhaps more crowded than it's ever been.
Yes, I think it's very crowded, and on top of that, I think the attention span has decreased
Mm-hmm.
quite
Mm-hmm.
exponentially. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking as a creator about that question,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially based on the fact that at this moment in my career, I'm working on projects that they come from my heart, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
care about what people think. Hopefully,
Yeah.
they will respond to what I'm working on, but it's not driven
Mm-hmm.
by big numbers, but things that I
Yeah.
believe they're important. And another question that I have
Mm-hmm.
for you is, um, why is songwriting important beyond artistic expression, especially in cultural and environmental contexts?
I think that beyond personal expression, beyond what you feel is important for you to say, music is such a compelling form of communication because it accesses so many aspects of the brain. It's accessible to people who maybe are less either interested in or able to engage with scholarly material on environmental issues. And part of my career is as a scholar, so I say that with respect. But I think that music is a way to reach people, and it's a language that is much more, I mean, that is can be very democratic and very accessible, and therefore perhaps is very useful for people like you and me, to convey the justice messages in particular that we wish to communicate to the world.
And mm, in your experience as a songwriter and as a singer, because you were telling me that you love using your voice, what are the three most important things to understand about using the voice as an instrument?
I think that the voice is or should be um, the language of the heart. I, like a lot of singers, spent my early years doing classical training, doing very sort of disciplined vocal education, and um, all of that technique really helps you as you move forward, and make this a career. But something that I've understood over time about the voice as well is that beyond that technique, there's a way for it to be very, very closely connected to your heart, and for the voice itself to be very, very much a medium for the full force of what you wish to say. So I would say to anybody who's an aspiring singer to pay attention to both of those things, because it's the combination of those that allows you to create art.
Um, what are the two things that the world needs today?
As I said before, the world needs sensitivity and the kindness that comes from sensitivity. And I think the world needs to listen, or there need to be more opportunities for people to kind of detach from all the noise that we live with, and have the silence that's required to hear your heart and to hear the hearts of others.
And from island environmentalism through music, what are the key lessons you hope readers to take away?
That manuscript that you're referring to is called, yeah, To Dream Again, Island Environmentalism Through Music. And a lot of it was written in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. So as mentioned before, I was born there, and a lot of my career is still very much kind of connected to students there. And so the essays and the chapters in those books are very much about how music can come to the service of people, of communities, of societies in the aftermath of natural disaster, and how music can be a resource not only within those communities and within that island, but it can also be a force by which people from islands around the world can connect with each other and can find solidarity. So basically that manuscript is sort of about the power of music in the face of environmental crisis, especially for people who live on islands and love their homes, our homes.
Fantastic. And can you name three people who have significantly influenced your life?
My parents. I don't know if that's one. I mean, if that counts as one or two people.
Well, if
Um,
if they're people, then I guess we can use that one. Yes.
Two people. No, I mean my no, my close relationship to my parents, I think, is one of one of the most important things in my life. And I would say, I mean, I know, yeah, this is not specific people, but I would also say kind of the
You can
community.
say specific people if you want.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
I think in
It's
everybody's
hard to think.
life, some individuals cross our paths and they help us
Yeah,
redirect our energy, our
yeah,
thoughts, our
yeah.
intentions. So you
Mm.
can say names if you want to.
It's hard. It's hard for me too because I think. I mean, I feel like it's. I mean, aside from, well, yeah, definitely my mother and my father, and then beyond that, I think just the community of elders and mentors that I grew up with, especially in San Juan, have are still just such a support and a guiding force for me because, of their wisdom, and also because they have always sort of accepted all the sides of me, including those like perhaps this sensitivity or whatever, that are not that that sometimes can cause can cause pain and difficulty.
And with your strong background in history, music, and environmental studies, how do these disciplines influence your songwriting and your performances or your
Very
music
much,
efforts, projects?
very much so. One of my favorite things that I like to do with lyrics is convey history in ways that are not necessarily part of like the scholarly method of historical investigation. So an example is, I like writing songs that are from the perspective of the more than human world. I have a song about settler colonialism that is the first person voice of a redwood tree. That kind of thing I really like to do because I think history. I mean, it is not only humans who are the stewards of history, and it is not only humans who remember what the story of our earth has been. And I think music allows for a certain type of imagination and creativity and even empathy in how you tell these stories, which which isn't really like traditionally part of kind of academic historical research.
And with your global upbringing and ties to multiple cultures, how do you integrate all this influence in your work and your personal identity?
Um, One of the things that I love about music is the way that you can seamlessly bring all these influences into a piece. Um, so musically, I mean, music provides such a beautiful space for me to explore the harmonies between those cultures. Within my, and I think the same is true of my personal background in general. I mean, one could say that like spiritually, I'm most influenced by, let's say by Indian philosophy, which I think is true. Socially, I'm very influenced by kind of life in the Latin Caribbean. Intellectually, I'm provoked by a lot of what happens in Washington D.C. and so on. I mean, that is true, but I think all aspects of my consciousness come from the meeting of those different influences, because belonging to one very much affects how you see the other, and vice versa.
And if my research is was done properly, you work with the Smithsonian and the Red Cross. How have these experiences shaped your views on cultural and environmental activism?
Um, yes. So my work with both of those organizations was when I was younger, before I started this project, Music and the Earth, and even before that, when I was involved in a lot of multicultural, environmental, multi-faith organizing. But there were certain things that I learned from those two environments, which were very helpful and stayed with me. At the Smithsonian, that was when I kind of realized the importance of history, or of studying history, not only to write academic volumes, but also to bring culture to life. And it was such an interesting experience meeting and working with curators and seeing how you can bring a history to life in an exhibition space. And I grew up in those museums as well, so the museums of Washington, excuse me. So there I really sort of I just discovered how interesting that can be, and how much I would like that kind of thing to be a part of my work. At the Red Cross, I was working as an assistant researcher in the field of of psychosocial responses to natural disasters and to traumatic events. In other words, the extent to which the Red Cross focused, on the non-physical aspects of recovering from these kinds of disasters. And so, there I realized how important it is to address the psychological, the social, the spiritual consequences of catastrophes, including environmental catastrophes. And that insight has also been very much a guiding thing in my work, that addressing the spirit as it goes through these events.
Can you share something about yourself that not many people know?
Um, I well, I love to dance. I think a lot of people know that, though. And
Well, I didn't know
I
that. What do you like
oh, you
dancing?
didn't know that.
Merengue and salsa?
Merengue, salsa. I like just finding different styles. I love cumbia. I love to dance. I mean, that, and practice yoga and do all of those things. Those mind body things,
So
because I
let,
think
let
that
me
that
let me tell you something. I also love
yeah,
love dancing. It's one of the things
yeah,
that I
very good.
that I enjoy, and I'm gonna surprise you with something. I think you're familiar, or you know that I write bilingual children books that we donate
Hmm.
through a project called Little Explorer, Big World.
Hmm.
I wrote a
Hmm.
book about music called
Mm.
the Magical Musical Journey, and the
Okay.
foreword was written by Gilberto Santa Rosa. That probably
Ah, okay.
you have done
Yeah, of
some of
course.
his songs.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, we have that in common.
Yeah.
Dancing is
Yeah.
something that I think is a magnificent way of expressing and living life. But tell me
I
something else that people will be surprised uh, when they watch this interview in the future.
um uh, I mean, probably many things. One's personal life, and one's social life. I mean, there's so much about you that isn't part of your like public life. It's hard for me to answer that question. Many things, I'm sure, and we are just getting to know each other, and this is my first interview with you. If I think of something that I would share now, I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, many of my questions sometimes they're personal with my guests, so don't take it personal. And can
Yeah.
you discuss a project or a song you're particularly proud of, and why?
I am proud um, of a few of the justice songs that I have written in particular. One is, maybe my favorite, is a song called Frontline, which is about um, disaster capitalism on tropical islands. And what I mean by that is, so say, for instance, in Puerto Rico, after Maria, we've seen this huge influx of luxury real estate development on coastal land, and in some cases protected coastal land. So we've had very, very wealthy interests kind of seizing upon the vulnerabilities that that an island faces in the aftermath of natural disaster, to further their own interests and develop new luxury properties, and essentially in some cases start a campaign to attract wealthy settlers to coastal zones while displacing large numbers of people. This is something that I've been seeing in the aftermath of Maria in person, and it's the focus as well of my doctoral research. And so I wrote this song that is a response to those dynamics. And I hope very much that over time, perhaps this song travels around the world and in some way serves as a way to you know link people who are all facing this kind of thing, which is people on so many tropical islands and coastlines around the world now.
In your work, you often explore the history of ecological justice, or maybe we should say injustice, in global
Mm-hmm.
tourism.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share some of the lesser known aspects of this issue?
Definitely. Uh, in the past year or so, I have learned so much about the earliest stages of beach tourism. This is the subject of my research project now. I'm looking at the earliest stages of the commercialization of the beach zone of Waikiki in Hawaii. And which began in the 1890s, which I think is much earlier than people think. And over the course of doing this research, I've realized that before a place becomes like a tourist destination, before it's marketed as a tourist destination, so much manipulation of the ecosystem, of the legal systems in these places, the way that property is defined, and the social culture of beaches has to happen. So there's like a whole behind the scenes story that tourists and often residents of coastal zones don't know. Um, so I would say that.
And through your extensive work, what have you learned about the principles and challenges of coexisting?
I think that coexistence is, I mean, in my opinion, it is the subject of our time, not only because of how socially divided we sometimes are, but also how how separate we consider ourselves from the natural world. I've learned that, okay, well, that despite, I mean, while those divisions are certainly true, I've learned, I think, that the power of dialogue and creativity to to um, to imagine and come up with ways of coexisting which really respond to the challenges of the time. So I've done research on Caribbean history around the subject of coexistence and creativity. But I think that one of the main lessons is that we have the responsibility to harness our creative capacities to imagine more sustainable futures. And creativity is a resource and an ability which all the peoples of the world have. And so I believe we all must come together, utilize that creativity to imagine a sustainable future.
And Priya, let me ask you, what surprising findings have you uncovered about Waikiki Beach? I believe one of your projects is the paradise industry, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what
Yes.
have you uncovered, or what have you learned?
Well, as I said before, I've learned so much about what has to happen, meaning what is required before a beach zone becomes the type of place that people tend to imagine the beach zone is. Most people think that a beach zone consists of the ocean, sand, the some sort of avenue or boulevard where hotels are, shops behind that. But usually, that landscape is the result of huge manipulations to the ecosystem. So in the case of Waikiki, um, the neighborhood consisted of wetlands, and all of those wetlands had to be drained, and these artificial barriers between land and sea had to be created. Coral had to be blasted in order to create what they called then as a bathing beach, where you could swim and wade rather than be hurt by sharp coral. So much so. And in the case of Waikiki, I mean, so all of this, what happened is in such contradiction to the indigenous philosophies and stewardship practices, which previously defined how the neighborhood was managed.
Thank you. And is there a piece of technology you can live without? And please don't mention the phone. Is there something
No, not
else?
the phone. No,
Yeah,
not the
but is
phone.
there a piece
Social
of
media.
technology that you can live without?
A microphone, a recording microphone. Singing is, for me, it's a very sometimes a very intimate and spiritual thing, which in some ways I kind of, it's almost like prayer, in some ways I sort of keep it to myself, but through a recording microphone you can share those experiences and share that state of being with others, and I don't think I can live without it anymore.
And how can we use diverse sounds to benefit rather than harm the non-human beings we share our planet with?
I think this is a very important question, because a lot, for everything that I say about how wonderful music is, a lot of the popular music in the world is, in addition to being misogynistic and aggressive, is also very materialistic. And so I think, rather than specific sounds, I think, of course, including soundscapes of the more than human world can be very effective as a way of fostering connection and empathy. But beyond specific sounds or specific techniques, I think it's important for us to keep in mind the potential of music to move us beyond that kind of patriarchy and to move us beyond materialism, because a lot of our current top hits do the opposite.
And Priya, as someone with such a rich background in music and history and environmental studies, what are 3 books you think everyone should read to gain a deeper knowledge or understanding of our world?
One of my favorite books, which has been, I've kept with me since I was about 15 years old, is a book called Paradigm Wars: Indigenous Peoples' Resistance to Globalization. And it was written by Jerry Mander and Victoria Tolly Corpus. I believe around the time that it came into my life in the mid 2000s, and it's just a wonderful collection of documents, of speeches, of research by Indigenous peoples about the detrimental effects of market-led or neoliberal globalization. So this was like a hugely influential book for me. I'm looking at my bookshelf to see. I think that I've also been, I've been very influenced and helped also by Sufi poetry, by Rumi's poetry in particular, because it embraces, it embraces uncertainty and affirms the importance of all different kinds of love, and that's been a very helpful book for me as well. And a third, I think, let me see if I can think of a novel or a. I'll let you know about the third. There's so many beyond like the few that are very influential. Then there's like a whole range of next ones. I'll tell you when I think of the right one.
All right, all right. And normally, when I have people with musical talent, I ask them to do something live, to sing, to perform. You already told me you only do this early in the morning, so I'm not going to ask you that.
For the time
Sadly,
being, and thank you for respecting that.
sadly. But Do you think you can recite some words of one of your songs? You don't need to
Yeah.
sing, but just share with
Yeah, yeah,
us
yeah.
this song.
Yeah. Um, I would say, let me see. Well, I'll share the lyrics. Oh no, I'll show you the lyrics of that of the tree, the song from the perspective of the tree that I told you about before. Um, Conflict rages, a story for the ages, hearts in cages, silent stage sages. This tale is far too old, my home bought and sold, measured out in stolen gold. I'm tired, truth be told. But the thing about being ancient is you learn to be patient, to wait and see what will be. And this is the time to end the crime, to help us grow. This I know. And then it repeats. Um, and there's many other lyrics I could share with you.
Can you share another one?
Sure. Okay. So the frontline, the song Frontline, the one about disaster capitalism is, we sound our call from the shore as we have so many times before. While the waves ripple and the sun shines, hear our call from the front lines. You love us because we never worry, because we never you love us because we never hurry, because you can be wealthy here, but let's make something crystal clear. You think the island is here to sell, but we know all too very well that this is precious, sacred ground. Now be quiet and hear its sound. And we sound our cry in the Hall of Nations, a song for 1,000 generations, a call for a resolution, for a real and true solution, a cry for restitution, a now or never revolution. You think the world is in your hands, that you can own the sea and sand, that the island served on a silver platter, as if all life here doesn't matter. You fancy yourself royalty, but you cannot shake our loyalty. And as you sink in your own lies, our strength soars to the skies. And the chorus repeats, and we sound our cry in the Hall of Nations, a song for 1,000 generations, a call for a resolution, for a real and true solution, a cry for restitution, a now or never revolution.
Wow, very powerful and very beautiful. So, like the last note of your song or your poem, our time is coming to an end. Sadly,
Mm,
because I
mm.
have really enjoyed learning and
Likewise. Thank
listening
you.
to your thoughts.
Thank
Um, but I just want to ask you one more thing. I always use the expression never stop dreaming. It's present on all my communications, formal, informal, it's always there. How would you express this concept in your own words?
you. I would say never stop imagining, because the power of the imagination is, I think, incredible and never ending. And it's very easy to feel like, what we imagine or what we hope to be true cannot exist because of the centuries of structures and ideologies, that have made the world, that have cut us off from perhaps what people like you and me hope the world could be. But I would say never stop imagining, never stop visualizing what a loving and kind and sustainable future looks like. Because even if those imaginings, do not uh, make it into, the the halls of power, they transform you and they transform your consciousness and perhaps also the consciousness of the people around you, making you much stronger and much more able to work for the world that you love.
All right, Priya. So it's been a real pleasure. Um,
Likewise.
thank you for accepting my invitation to be in
Thank
this
you so much.
humble show, and I hope our paths will cross in the future. Thank you
I
for
hope
for
so as
sharing.
well. Thank you so much.
All right then. Bye bye. Ciao ciao.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.